One up is KN.
Needs the mic.
Can't hear you.
Okay, wait, hang on. Okay. Stop the timer.
Needs the mic. The 57, 58. She's got. Yeah, you got to use that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's the lapel mic for you to hear
That's
the
for the-
video.
that's for the video.
That's why he's the techie guy, folks.
Yeah, it's-
That's
yeah.
why he's the techie guy. So I promise I lied to you. You're still using this microphone. Thank you so much, Adam.
In 1972, I graduated from a small rural high school in what I like to call the Illinois Outback. At that time, my view of the future was perfectly clear. I was going to play on the USA women's basketball Olympic team, and then I was going to transition to professional women's basketball. Even though, at the time, the USA did not have a women's basketball team for the Olympics. There was no professional women's basketball, and I had never played on a basketball team. In Illinois, school rules, it was against the law for us to play sports against other schools. But I did have a lot of home court experience, and I played at noon with the boys in the gym, but I had to play in my skirt and socks because you couldn't wear pants or tennis shoes to school. I went on to college. I finally got to play on a women's basketball team. My senior year, the USA announced they were going to field the team for the first time for the Olympics in '76. I was even asked to try out. However, the problem with that plan was Nancy Lieberman, Pat Head, later Summit, and Myers were all better than me, as was everyone they picked for the team. I did not make the team. But the most significant thing that happened to me in college was I met a woman and I fell in love. At that time, no woman was supposed to have that view of the future. My mother insisted I come home at the end of college. My girlfriend went on to live her life. I was home about a month when she shipped me off to Florida to live with my sister. I slept on my sister's couch, got a job at a beach motel, and as soon as I could, got an apartment that I really could not afford. I had one futon and a lamp and had peanut butter and jelly many nights for dinner. About a few weeks ago, an acquaintance of mine's 21-year-old grandson committed suicide. I think even when you're on the edge of such a tragedy, you so want to be able to have talked to them and let them know what your future was when you also saw no vision of you living in it. So I was coming home from work one day in Florida, and my neighbor said, "Wait a minute, we would like you to work as news secretary at WTSP, which was a local television station." He had never talked to me, I did not know his name. But we got to know each other. I went in, I got the job right away. I was there on the job for just like a month, and the chief engineer asked if I wanted to be a television engineer. I said, "What does that do?" He said, "It pays a lot more," so I said, "Yes." At this time, it was the beginning of equal opportunity, and television stations were reeling. Because for a job that is basically loading tape machines, film projectors, pressing buttons to decide what goes on the air, you had to have a first-class radio license, which is extremely math and technically oriented. Usually you spend months in a classroom and are mentored on the job to get it. I had 3 months to get it on my own. I was set up for failure, but I did not fail. I passed the test, I thrived in television. But television is long hours, 12, 10 hours a day at that time. I worked nights and weekends. So I had no opportunity and didn't know how to meet anyone. I was still really lonely. But I was in the tape room one day and I got a call. And the gentleman on the other end of the phone literally said this as his first words. "We would like you to come work at KTBI in St. Louis, Missouri." I said, "We have beaches." And he said, "We'll triple your salary." I went to St. Louis. I love St. Louis. I love television there. They taught me to technical direct. But still, I'm working these long hours. I'm in this same pattern. I can't meet anyone. I'm lonely. I get a call from WRTV in Indianapolis. And the gentleman says, "We would like you to technical direct the Indy 500. I'm like, sure. But I'm still lonely. And my brother one day says to me, "You need to just go get Norma back." So I finally took his advice and I contacted Norma, who lived here in Dayton. I applied for a job at WHIO, first television job I ever applied for. And we have been a couple. My wife and I have been together for decades. We play golf. We watch a lot of women's basketball. And I so would love to tell that young man or any person, young person, your current view is not necessarily your future.
Every family has something that they do that all the other families think is weird. In my family, that weird thing stems from the fact that my dad would read the newspaper every single day. Now this can be a good thing because they always say that the past is a good indicator of what might happen in the future. And nobody took that to heart more than my dad. And like any good dad, he wanted to protect his kids from all of the terrible things that he would read about in the paper. And he figured that the very best way for him to do that would be to conduct drills that the whole family would participate in. Now, some of the drills were pretty normal, think tornado drill, fire drill, but some of the other drills were a little bit more unconventional. When I was around 10 years old, I had just gotten home from school, walked in the garage, and ran into my dad. And he said, "Hey Taylor, how was your day at school?" I said, "It was great, Dad." He goes, "That's fantastic. Get in the trunk of the car." I said, "What do you need me to get in the trunk of the car for?" And he said, "Well, if you would just get in there, you'll see." So I got in the trunk of the car, and to my surprise, my dad shut the trunk and locked me inside of it. He said, "Do you see the glowing handle?" I'm like, "No, it's pitch black in here." He said, "Look around, there's glowing handle. Stop freaking out and just pull it." I found the handle, I pulled it, the trunk open. I'm laying in the trunk looking up at my dad, and I go, "Why are we doing this?" And he goes, "I'm trying to show you what to do if you ever get kidnapped. Stop asking so many questions and just focus." And then he locked me in the trunk for a second time and taught me how to kick out the taillights and wave my hand through them. Now, when you grow up doing these drills all of the time like I did, it wasn't a question of if I would get kidnapped, it was when am I going to get kidnapped? So about a year after that drill, when I was 11 years old, I had just gotten off the school bus, and it was about a quarter of a mile walk to get to my house. So as I'm walking down my driveway to the house, I hear some sticks crack behind me. So I peek over my shoulder, and I notice that there is a white pickup truck slowly following me down my driveway. And I thought to myself, is this guy serious? A broad daylight kidnapping? I mean, it's bold, but not an original choice. I mean, what's his plan here? I've been training for this moment for my whole life. What's he gonna say? "Oh, I lost my puppy. I need your help finding it." Yeah, right, pal. "Oh, you're lost and you need directions to the gas station?" We both know that I'm 11 and I don't know how to get there. If you want to kidnap me, you're gonna have to do better than that. So I play it cool and I act like I don't see the truck. And I keep walking till I get him right where I want him. As I'm parallel to the creek in the woods, I whip out a spin move where in one movement I rip off my backpack, spinning in a circle, and throw it to the side of the driveway. Now, if your family did not do kidnapping drills, let me tell you why this is a genius move. Number one, the kidnapper might look at that and go, ooh, that was weird. I don't think I actually want this one anymore. Number two, if you're wrong and it's not a kidnapping but a robbery, they're gonna go for the bag and you can get away. And number three, if you're right and it is a kidnapping, you gotta shed a few pounds so you can run faster. So spin move, backpack's over here, I start running like Forrest Gump this way, as fast as I can. But I don't run straight, no. I run in a zigzag motion. Now this is where 11-year-old me had gotten a little confused. I had mixed up the escaping a kidnapper drill with the escaping an alligator attack drill. But it was a nice move nonetheless, zigzagging towards the woods. So I get in the woods and I know I don't have much time. I can't zigzag run all day. I gotta find a place to hide. So I see a fallen, rotting log, and I take my 11-year-old body and lay it as flat as I can, waiting for the kidnapper to run by like an idiot. I waited 20, 40, eventually a full 60 minutes, and the kidnapper hadn't ran by. But you're not gonna get me that easy. I know he's waiting outside the woods where I came from, so I take the back way. The back way was directly through the woods, jumping over logs, going through thistle bushes, getting poison ivy on my entire body. And finally, I get to the edge of the woods and I peek out from my hiding place behind a tree trunk. And I see the kidnapper and my dad talking. So I wait in case my dad needs some backup. But that's when my dad reaches out his hand and shakes the kidnapper's hand. In that moment, I realized that the man who had just seen me twirl off my backpack, zigzag run into the woods an hour prior, wasn't a kidnapper, but somebody that my dad was doing a business deal with. So you might be thinking, will I do such drills with my own children? And the answer is absolutely. I did not get kidnapped, and I have yet to have been eaten by an alligator.
By the time I turned 30 years old, I had approximately 10 different identities, and they were all hanging in my closet. There was the punk rocker with the super tight plaid pants and the band t-shirt of a punk rock band so obscure even I hadn't heard of them, but you know, my friends said they were cool, so. There was the corporate baddie moment. That was the tailored blazers straight out of Express at the mall, and a little pencil skirt that like never quite fit my hips right. There was the retiree on a cruise ship, but obviously that one kind of stuck. I had gone through all of these iterations of myself, and nothing quite fit. I grew up poor, like not regular poor, but rural small town poor, so we had one thrift store. And when I came into school one day with this purple silk ruffly shirt that made me look like a cartoon pirate, I was strutting because I looked good. Until Jessica said, "Oh my gosh, that was mine, but my mom said I had to give it away to poor kids who couldn't afford new clothes. I guess that's you." We can all boo Jessica, right? I'm sure she's a lovely person now. But that was when I first learned to be ashamed of wearing secondhand clothes. And I promised myself when I was a grown-up, I was gonna live in a big city like Dayton, Ohio. Check. And I was going to wear new clothes from J.C. Penney. The pinnacle of fashion, ladies and gentlemen. So I did just that. I used my grown-up money to buy clothes from J.C. Penney and from Express and Nordstrom and all of these places in the mall. See, in a mall, remember those? You could walk down the aisles and pick who you wanted to be. Did I want to be the cool, hippie, festival-going girl? Yep, I had one of those too. Unfortunately, the whole psychedelics thing is really scary for me. I think my brain's too creative and I can't do walls breathing, so that never really worked out. I tried on all of these different personalities, and it wasn't fitting. And then I found myself in a thrift store for the first time in my adult life. And I think I was there to buy a costume for some party, and I found something that I really liked. And it wasn't for a costume, it was just, a dress or a sweater or something. But I unironically purchased that. Because when I put it on my body, I looked in the mirror, and for the first time, I thought, oh my God, I think that looks like me. I had been putting on costumes, and I'd been playing roles. I would see my boss walk into a room and with this confidence. She knew the history of a situation and she knew the path forward to solve a problem. But I would put on a blazer that looked just like hers, and I still felt like an awkward college grad who had no idea what I was doing in there. Who even hired me? Why are they trusting me with this? I would see my friend at the bar in that cute little zebra print mini dress of the early 2000s, and she was like talking to all the guys and getting drinks bought for her. And I was still in the mini dress, arguing with the young Republican at the side of the bar. I wasn't fitting in my clothes, not in a physical way, but in a spiritual way. I was playing roles that weren't mine to play. So as I started going to the thrift store more and more, I had zero direction. You've got sequins next to flannel. It's bananas in there. There's no one to tell you who you are in a Goodwill. So as I would buy things, it's because it brought me joy. A color that made my eyes dance. It was a fabric that felt like it was a second skin. It was a dress that twirled. And I'm building my future from someone else's past. When I put on a leopard print faux fur coat and I put my hand in the pocket and there is a CVS receipt, or there's someone's tissue, I know that this is someone else's story. And hopefully when they decided to put that in a black garbage bag and give that to a Goodwill, they realized that that wasn't fitting their story anymore. That wasn't fitting who they are inside. And it was left there for me. I'm building my future, my identity, on someone else's past. And I don't know who I'm gonna be in 10 years or 20 years. I may look back and think, oh my God, I wore that. But it doesn't matter, because I'm gonna figure out who I am $1.99 at a time.
So if you can't tell from my whole personality and the fact that I bought like 3 pizzas for 3 people, I grew up as an only child. I had a cousin who lived across the street from us, and there was one summer when my parents brought him on our family vacation. Like, his mom had been sick, so he was gonna come with us. I had a sibling for 4 days, and it about fucking killed me. You might be picturing like the beach or one of those stores that sells hermit crabs and saltwater taffy. And that is probably because you did not grow up in a family that went every single summer to Dearborn, Michigan. And how sad for you, honestly. Dearborn, Michigan, perfect vacation destination because you can add on. You can go to Cedar Point on the way up. You can extend your trip and hit up Traverse City. But the gem of Dearborn, Michigan is the Henry Ford Museum of American Innovation. That's fucking right. That's right. It is the biggest museum campus in the United States. It blows the Smithsonian out of the water. There's like, it's huge. There's like an outside part, and it's got all these historical buildings that Henry Ford's estate has brought to the Detroit area over the entire 20th century. So there's like Thomas Edison's lab, and Noah Webster's house, and the real Wright Brothers bike shop. The one here is fake. The real one's in Detroit. And the museum, and like, are there historic reenactors? You tell me. Like, be so serious right now. Of course there are. But the museum itself, like, totally different vibe. It kind of just tells like all of America's greatest triumphs and darkest shames and biggest heroes through like pop culture stuff and gears. So you can see like the real bus that Rosa Parks was arrested in, and the limousine where JFK got his head blown off, and it's right next to an Oscar Mayer Wienermobile that you might just want to see because it's cool. So like the vibe is perfect. I was the exact right age to pretend that I did not want to go to the Henry Ford Museum, like a liar. But I knew as soon as we got into the car, this guy was going to be a problem for me. We were encouraged to bring road trip snacks, okay? And my cousin Brandon had selected to bring a sampler platter of Jelly Bellies. If you remember these, it was like every flavor of Jelly Belly, but in like a Mancala tray, like a shallow tray. So when you sit in the way back of your Ford Expedition and Bauer Edition, because it's fancy, and with this thing on your knees, you're just throwing beans everywhere. So I'm immediately recruited to clean up after this fool when we get to Cedar Point, and he doesn't want to ride any of the good rides, just wants to look at the training rides, which is fine. The next day, he hustles his butt down to the breakfast buffet at the Best Western, literally stuffs his pocket with breakfast sausages and brings them up to our room to eat them, so now everything smells like sausages. He's hogging the bathroom, he's whining, he wants to trade seats in the car with me. I cannot wait to ditch this kid. My mom makes us apologize to each other like 3 times before we even get to the museum, where again, he doesn't want to see any of the cool stuff. It's locomotives all the way. So I abandoned my entire family and I go to my favorite exhibit at the time. It was this thing that was like vignettes of teen life for all the generations that we've had since we started naming generations. So like the silent generation, you can see like a talking movie and a real edition of Life magazine, and then all the way up through Gen X where you could like listen to Boy George on vinyl and they had a pet rock or something. And then at the very end, there's a blank space. And it says, Generation Now, there's a big sign. And it says, if you were born between 1980 and 2000, your time is right now. What will you do to make the future better? Will you be the next civil rights pioneer? Will you be the next huge inventor? How will you make America a better place for your neighbors? And like, here's the thing, you can blame my mom or Schoolhouse Rock or Joe Biden's 2016 DNC speech. You cannot credit Henry Ford because he was an avowed anti-Semite and they have a whole sign apologizing for him at the Henry Ford Museum. But that kind of stuff to this day just makes me like real like PBS patriotic, you know, like it's a nation of immigrants and we're second to none and all that. And I will say I never became a civil rights pioneer. I have yet to invent the next pet rock. But at the gift shop on the way out, I did buy my stupid cousin a new bag of jelly beans.
A few years ago, I was over at a friend's house and their toddler tripped and fell, as toddlers are wont to do because they are woefully imbalanced. And she picked her child up, he was fine, and he was continuing to sniffle because they have no perspective. And the mom looked and said, "Are you hurt in your body or are you hurt in your heart?" And I said to myself, wow, what a cool distillation of like millennial approach to parenting. Like we're not, you know, there's no walk it off, you're fine, I'll give you something to cry about. Are you hurt in your body or are you hurt in your heart? Let's get to the meat of the issue. Because maybe if you're hurt in your heart, it's okay, and we can talk about that. I am millennial. I am what the demographers would call a geriatric millennial. I am as old as millennials can get. We just talked about that, born 1980 to 2000. I'm pretty much right there, right? So I have gotten the opportunity, especially as a child-free adult, to watch my generation become parents. And I just gotta say, we're doing a really good job. And yes, and I'm not up here to talk about mistakes that may have been made by previous parenting cohorts. I'm not gonna talk about things that parents may have done to generations before us, especially not with one of my own parents literally in the house. I would never. What I'm gonna say is that I think every parenting cohort does the best they can with the tools they have. And one of the things our generation has is that we're the first generation to come into parenting therapized. We came into parenthood already having done work to resolve some of our own childhood traumas, because everybody's got them, don't pretend like you don't. And it just made me start thinking about the kids that became the parents that are the parents today. And a couple of weeks ago, I had the opportunity to go back to what I consider to be my hometown. And I was going through some old sites and some old haunts, and I absolutely did not illegally enter my high school, because that would be a crime. But let's just say I was there. Doesn't matter how. And I'm walking through the halls with my best friend, and I'm pointing things out. Oh my God, that's the hallway where the English classes were, and oh my God, that's the auditorium where I have all of my drama classes, and oh my God, that's the bathroom where during the sophomore year homecoming dance I sobbed for 3 hours. And then I did one of those things where you look at somebody and you realize that that was not necessarily a normal experience for everyone. Now listen, sophomore year homecoming is an entire story in and of itself, and we could go there, but we don't have time right now. But I started thinking about the kids that I went to school with, and the things that I experienced, and the fact that those kids are now the adults, many of whom are doing such a great job parenting kids. And I thought about how exciting it is, how really actually awesome it is that kids who used to make fun of other kids for developmental disabilities would now never let their children use the R slur. I think about how exciting it is that kids who grew up with their first exposure to queer people being like, I don't know, Will and Grace or the Birdcage, are now happy to say, yes, my love, I will take you to your first pride. I thought about how great it is that kids who maybe spent 11 years mercilessly mocking and ostracizing someone who looked different are now teaching their kids that every body is beautiful. And that is because our generation has done the work to figure out that maybe they were hurt in their bodies and their hearts. And so when I think about the future and I look at the kids now, the little Gen Alphas scootling around, got one of them back there, hey, and I can look at the future that way, I have to first look at the past, and then I can look at the present. And it is through that lens that I can view the future. And I think it's going to be pretty good, and I think we're going to be okay. Thank you.
I think it's stuck.
It's really good. You don't have to lean into it. Just stand it. It's really hot.
It was a summer day, and I had entered into a crowded lecture hall. It was my final year of my master's degree in pastoral ministry. The program director stood in front of us after just buttering us up with a very delicious locally sourced muffin. And then her tone shifted as she began to talk to us about academic integrity and artificial intelligence. She said that she wanted all of our eyes to look at her and to solemnly swear that we would never use ChatGPT or any of its evil cousins in the creation of our subject matter. Of course, she was an Indian woman. She was small in stature, but commanding in presence. And I knew she meant business because I've been raised by a small and mighty Indian woman. That day I thought to myself, I would never use AI in that way. I was a 4.0 GPA student. I didn't need AI to help me with my grades. But more importantly, I love creativity, and I love originality. I love to see a pristine, crafted 5-paragraph essay. I love to see the watercolor explode across the wash on my page. And I love to craft and frame the perfect story for a captive audience at the bright side. So whether I'm using my garden spade or Canva, or if I'm working with my very unruly sourdough starter, I love the painstaking process of idea generation. I love the hours of meticulous fine-tuning of an idea, and I love the final product when it's done. And I would never think of shortchanging the creative process for a cheap grade. So fast forward with me about a year. I'm in my final semester, I finished all of my initial classwork, and submitted it, and I was entering my final 2-week stretch of in-person instruction. As I did that, I couldn't attend the first night of class because I was a groomsman at one of my friend's weddings. But at the reception, I started to get some really disturbing text messages from the classmates that were already in class. Dude, this professor is really intense. He spent the last hour lecturing us about AI usage, and he said that one of the papers in the class had been generated by AI. He said, if that was your paper, I challenge you to not question my judgment, because if you do, I will make you sit through an oral examination of the entire book, and your grade will probably end up being worse than it is right now. I pitied the fool. That night, I went home, I started looking at my student portal, checking out the classwork for the next day. The question kept circling, which seminary student, which pastor thought it was okay to use AI to generate his assignment? Come on. I looked into my syllabus and see the lectures for the next day, and then I saw a notification on the top of my gradebook. It said that my professor had graded my book review. I clicked on it, fully expecting to see a good mark, because for my 4 years, I'd always done well in my assignments. So I was fully unprepared for what I saw next. Because when I looked at that score, my stomach dropped, my breath was taken away, and my mind started to race. Because what I saw was the worst score I've ever seen in my entire academic career. I saw an F. And even worse than the F was the comments that my professor wrote. He said, your paper contains too many false information and made up facts. My paper? Too many false information? If you're gonna critique my work, at least use proper grammar, am I right? So I looked back at him and I said, at least out of everything, at least I wasn't being accused of using AI to generate my paper. So I took my book in one hand, I looked at the screen on the other hand, and I started making a cross-reference list of citations of where I found all of my facts that I'd written in my paper. With citation list in hand, I went to class the next day and asked if I could talk to him about my grade. He cut me off. He looked me in the eye smugly and said, your paper was the paper that was flagged by Turnitin.com with 66% AI generation. He didn't believe I even read the book. I was stunned. I stuttered there trying to think of how I can convince him that I had read the book, that I didn't use AI. I had my list of citations to show him. I told him that I could show him my Google Doc timestamps to show I had done this over a course of a period of time. I even thought of telling him how I had pledged my integrity to my Indian program director mother. But none of it mattered, because he had made up his mind. I either take the 50% grade or take the oral examination on the entire book. And that's when I felt it. The pain of injustice that cuts deep. And the irony of my plight too, because he was trusting a software that was using AI to judge my original work as 66% AI generated. He was saying that I was taking the shortcut when he was the one that was taking the quick and short route to judge me, not taking the effort for empathy, not taking the creative complications and struggles of engaging in a true critical conversation. I challenged him, of course, and I sat through that oral examination, and when I finished it, he begrudgingly admitted I probably read the book, though not very well. And I walked out of his office with heavy steps and with flushed cheeks, because I'd experienced one of the worst consequences of AI, the breakdown of human trust. We'll never fully know if we see a video or a news report or a crazy cat lady video, if that was really real. And we'll never really know if the poem that our lover wrote to us was really created by them. I saw one of the sad realities of the future, but also a call to action. A call to keep thinking, to keep writing, to keep creating, and to keep building trust. Because maybe one of the best, most beautiful gifts that we can offer to each other in a post-AI world is the gift of real human trust.
Last September, I took the stage at Dayton Story Slam for the first time, and I told a story about my grandmother. She was one of the kindest and strongest people I ever knew, and somewhere in that story I talked a little bit about my mom and my sister, who I really think carry on my grandmother's compassion and her grit and her fierce sense of right and wrong. And when I stood on the other stage telling that story, I absolutely could not envision a world in which 3 weeks later I would be sitting at the foot of my mom's hospital bed. We were playing Uno and sharing Dairy Queen and trying to figure out what was going on. And in that moment, I absolutely could not envision a world in which less than 3 weeks later, she would pass away quietly with my sister's family surrounding her. Couldn't have seen it coming, certainly not so soon. But, at my mom's memorial, I talked about the things that I felt that she had given to me and my sister Katie. Confidence that we could succeed and unconditional love, even when we fell short. She gave us an expectation that we would love other people the same way, and she gave us tools to solve problems and values to guide us. And it wasn't just us. She wore these values every day. She lived them, and by living them, in doing that, she shared them with hundreds of other kids and young adults. She was a scout leader. She was a swim coach. She was a mentor. She was a boss. She taught lifeguards. She was a friend to so many of these kids that grew up around her, and many of them were at her memorial. And she also did this as a grandmother, because right after she retired, my sister, Katie, had a daughter, Abby. And my mom said, well, I'm moving to where the grandchild is, obviously. So my niece has grown up grew up with my mom right next door. And God, my mom loved being a full-time grandma. Abby, they played together, they read together, they listened to music together, they went to parks and the grocery store and museums together. Abby started high school last fall, and she turned 15 while my mom was in the hospital. And I know that she didn't see this future coming, at least not when it did. The thing about Abby is she's a really, really good kid. She's kind. She works hard. She gets good grades, you know. My sister Katie and her husband Ben have always been clear that they expect a lot from her, and they're also clear that they give her a lot, that they will love and support her no matter what, and that they believe she can do everything that she sets out to do. And my mom she just adored Abby, and she cheered her on in everything. And now Abby plays soccer and she runs track, and she's gotten really, really competitive in the last year. She plans her meals around her track meets. She schedules her homework around her soccer practices, and somehow she makes time for friends and pool parties and family. She is every bit of 15 years old. She is on her phone a lot. She complains about not having Peacock Premium because all of her friends are watching the new season of Love Island and she hasn't seen it yet. And she practices every child's constitutionally protected right to roll their eyes and go, "Ugh, Mom!" Oh, kind of a lot. But you know what? She's loyal. to her friends. She and her dad give each other shit like best friends, like buddies from high school give each other shit. And they sit next to each other at dinner and like whisper jokes that aren't meant for the rest of us. Like this is her, teenager and her dad do this. And when my mom was in the hospital, Abby sat down and wrote her a letter, like 2 or 3 pages, handwritten, and she sat next to my mom and read it to her. And we don't know for sure whether my mom could hear it at that point, but I have to think she did, and I have to think it made a difference. And a few weeks later, she asked if she could read part of that letter at the memorial service. And she wrote a little speech around the excerpt, and she stood at this memorial service in front of a bunch of people, some of whom she knew and some she didn't, and she stood tall and proud, and she cried her way through the whole thing, but she did it. And it was incredible. And a couple of weeks ago, my sister texted me Abby's report card and said, look, straight A's. And so I texted her and I said, your mom's bragging about you again. And I can only imagine the eye roll. But she texted me back and said, thanks. I said, how's your summer going? She told me about dance lessons because she's in her friend's quinceañera, and about, taking a rest before cross country picks up. And it's so easy to look at the future right now and feel pessimistic because the world's kind of scary and unstable. And I look at her and I see my sister and my mom and my grandmother, and I see their courage and their compassion and their grit and their intelligence. And I think, I don't know what her future is going to look like, but she's equipped for it. And she's smart and she's kind and she has values and tools. And she is not the only kid like this. And I think she's gonna be okay. And I think the world's gonna be okay, because I think people like her are gonna make it better.
When I was 3 years old, my dad took me to opening day to see the Cincinnati Reds. It was very exciting. It was there in Synergy Field, back when it was Synergy Field, atop the shoulders of the first man I ever loved, across the sea of people that I locked eyes with the second man I would ever love. He was in a clean, crisp, white and red pinstripe uniform. He had big, shiny brown eyes and soft brown polyester fur. He was a teddy bear. And when my dad handed him to me and said, well, what are you gonna name him? I looked at my dad and I said, well, who's the most famous Reds player of all time? And he said, without skipping a beat, Pete Rose. Problematic, I know, now. But I was 3, so Pete Rose the younger was born. And he very, very quickly became the 5th member of my small family to me. Took him home to the cute little white house we lived in the suburbs of Cincinnati. And like the Velveteen Rabbit, he was real. His white uniform soon became more beige, and the C over his chest got worn off, and the stuffing in his left arm where I always carried him just kind of disintegrated, because he was everywhere with me. He slept with me at night because I was very afraid of kidnappers for some reason. And he just became my best friend. Fast forward a year, and a lot of things have changed. For one, now I'm 4, very exciting. I have a new little sister, so I have 2 sisters instead of 1, and we're about to move. So about a week before the move, I decided it's a really good idea to play hide and seek with all of my toys. So I put all of my dolls and Pete into the beautiful bay window into the house we're leaving, and I cover my eyes, count to 10, and when I open them, they're all still there. And I'm like, guys, like, you gotta hide. Like, that's kind of the whole point of hide and seek. And then I look closer, and Pete is gone, because Pete obviously knows how to play hide and seek. I start looking for Pete. I'm searching, and the minutes draw on, and after a few minutes, I go and I find my mom, and I'm like, Mommy, Pete is hiding, and I can't find him anywhere. And then we look, and I look with my mom, and we can't find him, and the minutes turn into hours, and then my dad comes home from work, and then we all look for Pete. And that night, I ended up sleeping in my parents' bed because Pete was not there to protect me from the kidnappers. The days drew on, and I very specifically remember making a poster of a drawing of him, and then I asked my mom, I said, how do you spell lost bear? Because I was gonna hang posters up all around our neighborhood, because remember, we're moving in about a week. And it's baby's first existential crisis, and I've really been thinking about how we kind of are all of the people we've ever been just kind of stacked on top of each other in a trench coat. So in a certain sense, I still am that 3-year-old girl who's terrified of what's gonna happen if I move to a new house without my bear. And if I could talk to her, which I guess I can, because she's me, I would say, whatever you do, don't wax your own eyebrows in the mid-2000s. Do not date that guy your freshman year at Wright State. You'll know, the one, you'll know. And also, your sister's the one who hit Pete. He did not get up and walk away. And she's not telling you where he is because she's 2. So she doesn't really care. But I would also say, this is not the first time, this is not going to be the last time that you are going to think about the future and it's going to fill you with dread. Lots of things are going to happen that you can't control. But you are resilient and you are so full of love that you manifested that and put it onto a little piece of fabric shaped like a Cincinnati Reds playing teddy bear. And she would look at me probably and be like, that's all well and good, but do we find Pete? And I'd be like, oh yeah, you totally do. Actually, your dad finds him. Dad finds him. He's under the cushion of the baby bassinet that the baby doll sleeps in. And if I still have him 30 years later, he's here with me, so I think that little girl would be very excited to know that. And I think that if all of us could just really interact with that inner child that we have, I think they would be impressed with us. And I want to remind everyone still that you are resilient and you are full of love.
Hey y'all. Okay. So my sophomore year of high school, I had my first job shadow. I went to a college prep high school, so that meant that you had to know what you wanted to do before you went to college so that you could go to college and hit the ground running. So at the beginning of our sophomore year, they gave us that little career survey that asked you all the generic questions about what you were interested in. But on the survey, there was one question that had me in a chokehold. It was like, name your top 3 career choices. Now this was hard for me because I had a dream, y'all. My top 3 was being a talk show host like Oprah, a famous actress, or an English teacher if none of those 2 worked out. So I wrote that down. You know, I went back and forth. Do I want to just do what people tell me to do, which is like a teacher, a lawyer, a doctor? Do I want to put what was really in my heart? And that was the first time I was experiencing someone asking me what I wanted to do and me having confidence enough to put it down. Still didn't feel quite confident in my choices just yet, but I just knew that that was the start of doing it. So I turned in my survey, and a few weeks later, I got my first job shadow, and it was at, everybody around, drum roll please. It was at MetLife. I didn't know what MetLife was, but a quick Google search told me it was something about insurance. And I was trying to figure out, how did you get famous actress in insurance? So on my way to MetLife, I just thought about how I was going to be able to miss school, and if I got anything out of it, it was just to miss school. So we got to MetLife and we were greeted by Joe, who was your handy-dandy MetLife employee. He was amazing. He had a black turtleneck and just looked like a really friendly guy. He took me straight to his cubicle. We passed all the rows of cubicles and ended up at his. And he showed me my seat, which was this old gray chair with the metal arm holders. I sat down next to it and looked at the only decorative thing in his office, which was a sports calendar with the Steelers in February, which was cool because I like the Steelers. Joe sat me down and told me what MetLife was and what his role was, and it was something about insurance and checking people's qualifications, and as he kept talking, I kept hearing Charlie Brown's teacher just wom. He noticed that I was kind of losing focus, so he asked me about me. I'm like, now we're talking. I'll tell you all about myself. He asked me what I wanted to do, and I told him I wanted to be Oprah. I'm gonna have my own talk show host. I was starting to feel that confidence, and I want to be an actress and a teacher if that doesn't work out. He looked at me and smiled, the most friendliest smile, and he said, that third one sounds really promising. You know, here at MetLife, you know, there's stability, practicality. When you become an adult, you gotta think about adult things like bills. I'm happy at MetLife. This is a great job, and you should think about that teacher. That teacher, that sounds practical. And I looked at him and kind of like my heart broke. Here I am going back and forth between being an actress and Oprah, and you're telling me to stick with the teacher. I started going in that direction. He kind of, I don't know, saw my sadness or whatever. He wanted to show me the most exciting place in the office space, and that was the break room. So we went to the break room where there was a line for the coffee. The break room was really popular. And I sat there and I was just thinking about my fate. It felt like Joe was telling me that practicality was the future for me, and it was starting to settle in. Throughout the day, you know, I took a lot of bathroom breaks because I learned very quickly that bathroom breaks pass time. And I just was thinking like, is this like my future? Is this like what I should dream about? Just the practical lifestyle? Joe seems really happy. I watched him on his computer, filing through the files, talking to his coworkers, asking the same question. How was your weekend? How was your evening? How was your cat? How was your dog? Where are the kids? It just seemed like this conversation, that was the excitement in the workplace. So the job shadow came to an end. Joe walked me past all the cubicles, took me downstairs, and he asked me how did I like the job shadowing experience. I was debating on if I should be nice or honest. I chose nice because I didn't want to get in trouble. I told him it was great and I learned a lot. And I got back on the van to go back to high school. And on my way there, I started feeling like confident in my no to this practical lifestyle. Like I spent the whole day there, and for Joe, the practicality was his dream, but that wasn't my dream. My dream was to be the next Oprah. And I'm doing it, y'all. Hey.